the end of the meeting. Before we get started with our roll call, I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone why we're here. This is our purpose statement for the Recovery Board. The City of Asheville Helene Recovery Boards were established to support City Council's vision of a recovery that is rooted in resilience, rises in unity, repairs with care, and ready for tomorrow. The 4 boards represent City Council's priority areas of economy, housing, infrastructure, environment, and people. Through collaboration, expertise, and insight, each of the 4 boards will provide critical input on City Council policy recommendations while also extending the City of Asheville's communications through board member networks. I will now introduce all board members and staff. As I call your name, please say a quick hello. For those of you that are new to this room, your microphones here are on when the green light is on. Please speak directly into the microphone so all the folks listening at home can hear you clearly. If you need to cough, clear your voice, or otherwise, you can push this button here and the light will turn off. Okay. Good morning. Board members and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Daryl Burris, or D.
Good morning.
Alma Atkins.
Good morning.
Jack Engelman.
Good morning, everyone.
Elizabeth Likas.
Good morning.
Christy Hurlbert. Karen McNeil.
Good morning.
Leah Ferguson. Anna Alsobrook. Dave Greenson.
Hello.
Dan Leroy is not with us yet. Renee Treese.
Good morning.
Dawa Hitch, the Director of CAPE and the staff liaison to the board.
Good morning.
Michelle Smith, our Deputy City Clerk. And Brad Bannum, our City Attorney. We're going to now move on to our agenda. Everyone has an agenda printed off at your seat. The first item on the agenda is the approval of our November 4th, 2025 meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the November 4th, 2025 meeting minutes?
To approve the November 4th, 2025 meeting minutes.
You in a second?
Second.
Renee, thanks. And since we're all participating in person, we, correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, can do a roll, we don't have to do a roll call vote, correct? So all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Thank you. The minutes are approved. Let's see, we're going to move to our agenda, which is on another piece of paper here. Okay, this is the exciting business. We're moving on. So you may have, we're going to move on to our adoption of officers. This is an important role for us. These are 2 leadership roles. You'll work directly with staff to set the agenda. In future meetings, you'll be facilitating the meeting and helping us to proceed through business. I've received a few indications of interest or willingness to serve in these capacities via email. And we're going to go through that conversation today. We're going to look to you to formally nominate, adopt, and elect your chair and vice chair. So the 2 folks that I've heard from that have indicated an interest and a willingness are Jack and Elizabeth. And we'll open the floor to nominations, self or otherwise, in this conversation today. So let's start hearing from the folks that we've heard from, and then we can move on to nominations after that. So Jack, you want to make a quick statement?
Yeah, I know that sometimes there's a reluctance to serve as chair, so I just raised my hand to say, if there's no one else, like, I would be willing to do it. I teach, so I think my superpower is helping facilitate meetings and being efficient, making sure that people have a voice. But also, I don't want to, monopolize commission chairs. I want to make sure there are many other voices at the table. And I also indicated if there was someone who would like to serve in chair but didn't feel like they knew, the rules and how it works, I'd be happy to mentor someone in the vice chair role who hasn't done a chair. So it might be an opportunity, but I'm totally happy to step aside. So I want to encourage anyone else, if they're interested, like, please step up, and I'm happy to step back and not be in a chair or vice chair role and just be an at-large member.
Hi, Dan. You're fine. Come on in. Anyone else want to speak? Elizabeth, I know you mentioned a willingness or an interest in serving.
Yes, I kind of echo some things that Jack said in terms of if there was someone else that really has a burning desire and wants to grow into this role, I'm happy to support that person. And I also feel like I've gotten a pretty good overall picture the last 5 years in serving in different capacities with boards and commissions and liaisons to neighborhood advisory and multimodal, and hearing reports from lots of different city agencies, that I feel comfortable with the process and where we fall in that. Happy to use my facilitation skills, and I'm continually learning. So I'm also not going to know everything that I need to know at this point, but happy to work with anybody and serve in the role.
Thanks, Elizabeth and Jack. I want to open it up if there's anyone else that would like to speak to your own interest and willingness to serve or nominate others.
Leah, are you interested in serving as a vice chair?
I would certainly support that role with somebody as chair. I don't, I'm still learning, and I have been on a board before, but it's been some time, so I would be happy to support someone, and I'm an excellent support.
I would nominate Elizabeth to be chair and Leah to be vice chair.
There's a nomination on the floor. We can entertain other nominations or a second.
I nominate Jack Engelman. And also, I can't see her name,
Leah,
Leah Ferguson as co-chair.
let me clarify that, Alma. Are
Yeah.
you nominating Jack as chair and Leah as vice chair?
Yeah, vice chair. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we have a nomination on the floor for Elizabeth as chair and Leah as vice chair, and a second nomination on the floor from Alma for Jack as chair and Leah as vice chair. Do we have a second for either of those nominations or an additional nomination?
I second Elizabeth and Leah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for Elizabeth as chair and Leah as vice chair.
And I second Jack Engelman and Leah. Jack Engelman as chair and Leah as vice chair. Can I do that?
That was your nomination, correct? I believe we'll need a second,
Alma,
a different person.
I
to
will
that
second
guy.
Alma's nomination of Jack as chair and Leah as
Go ahead,
co-chair.
go ahead.
So we have two nominations on the floor. Are there any others? Any other motions? Okay, so I think for this, should we do a roll call? We don't need to do a roll call still. Yeah, we'll do one at a time. I just don't know how we want to vote.
Everybody, good morning. Brad Branham, City Attorney. You've done an excellent job with this process to this point. I'm hearing no additional nominations. I think we have a pretty good idea who your vice chair is going to be at this point. But we do need to go ahead and vote for each one of those. To make our minutes clearer, we're going to do both of those separately. So you're going to vote for your chairman. There are only two options. So we'll just call out the nomination one at a time, and it's just a show of hands for each. Whoever receives the most will be your chair. And then, even though I've got a pretty good idea again who your vice chair is going to be, we'll have that single motion raised, and everybody will be able to vote for that. So if you've got any procedural questions, I'm here, but if you can just call out the nominations, and we'll do two separate votes.
Okay, so first we're going to vote on the nomination for Jack Engelman as chair. All in favor, raise your hand. Raise your hand high. Okay. All opposed? We say opposed? Yes? We don't need to. Okay, we have 6. So that, I think that carries. Or do we do the vote for the second one? Do the vote for the second one in case anyone changes their mind. Okay, we're going to do a vote for the second motion, which was Elizabeth Likas as chair. All in favor? Just vote for this once. So if you voted yes on the previous vote, so that's 5. Just confirming that we see 6 for Jack and 5 for Elizabeth. Okay, so the motion to elect Jack as chair carries. And we're going to vote to a motion to elect Leah as vice chair. All in favor? Great. Leah is unopposed, and almost everyone voted for her, so I think that also carries. Right? We're set? I'm making eyes at the attorney in the audience, just to make sure we're on the up and up
I'm not
here.
going to keep running up here every time. But this is an excellent opportunity for those, I know many of you have served on boards before, but we've got a little bit of an interesting rule in North Carolina that says, thou shall vote, which means you don't have the ability to abstain ever, okay? Unless you've got a personal conflict on an issue. If you do, we'll address that. But generally speaking, this is just a good chance for me to say, you only had one option, which means everybody has to vote. You can vote no in many cases, but on this, it was one or no one. So essentially, this vote will be recorded as a unanimous vote, and that's just an example of the way we'll handle those things going forward. So thank you.
Thank you for practicing our rules and procedures. I appreciate everyone as we muddled through this. We now have a new board chair and vice chair. Thank you for your service, and in future meetings, you will have the opportunity to run the meeting. We'll carry forward today, and we get a chance to practice our voting again. We're going to move forward to our next agenda item, which is our adoption of the rules and procedures. Everyone should have a copy of this document, both in the emailed resources that we sent you. If you're looking at the one on your desk, I want to make sure that we're differentiating between this that you're looking at that requires your individual personal signature and the group rules and procedures that are linked in our agenda and that were emailed to you previously. So what we're voting on today here in this meeting is the adoption of our rules and procedures. What you're looking at, if you're thumbing through the document on your desk, is your individual. What is it, the document called, Michelle? Council's Rules and Procedures. Guidelines for you to sign individually. If you haven't signed that electronically, it's in your email, or you're welcome to sign that today, the document that you're looking at on your desk. You're making a confused face,
Are you
Elizabeth.
saying we should have that in front of us or just electronically?
You should just, the rules and procedures document you just have electronically.
Okay.
Right, you didn't print out the one we're voting on today. Yeah. So the one that's on here for you today is just for informational purposes. You can sign that and leave it with Michelle if you haven't already e-signed that document. What we're voting on today, what we're looking at and we're looking to adopt today is this body's rules and procedures, which you received via email. Just to make sure that we've confused you thoroughly. Does anyone have any questions about that? Great. If you have questions about the document that's in front of you, Michelle Smith, who's here, our deputy clerk, is available, and she can answer questions about that after the meeting. So we're going to go back to the adoption of our rules of procedure for this board. Have any questions or a motion to adopt the rules and procedures for the People and Environment Recovery Board?
Excuse me, but I don't think I received the email with this document to be able to complete it as you would desire.
Okay. We can follow up with that after the meeting. Michelle can resend that email to you. So if
Thank
you, yeah, if you do want to receive that via email, just check in with Michelle before we leave today, and she'll jot your name down and send it out. Okay, returning to this board's rules of procedure, do I have a motion or any questions?
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt?
Kim?
A second from Renee. All in favor? Great, unanimous, adopted. Well done. Okay, we're going to move on to our updates and reports section of our agenda. And for this, I'm going to welcome some members of our planning and urban design team up to the podium. I'm going to present on the Urban Forest Master Plan. Keith, I can help you find it.
Thank you, Board. My name is Keith Aiken. I am the urban forester for the city of Asheville. I'm going to give you a really short presentation. By my account, you guys are forward on your agenda, so we may have a little bit of extra time in here, but they gave me 5 minutes. Anybody knows me, 5 minutes is probably, I might be able to get it first couple sentences in. So anyway, Asheville Urban Forest Management Plan, we've kicked off and is running. What will the plan do for us going forward? It will focus on long-term management programs and skills, needs and goals. We will identify issues that we've seen within our ordinances up to this date. We will create a shared vision amongst the citizens of Asheville. We have yet to reach out to them in any kind of scope, so we will get going on that. It will create recommendations and strategies. It will also focus on city initiatives that we want to go forward with. So the implementation strategy, which will probably come out in November, to adopt some of these different strategies and that sort of thing. We will also have buy-in amongst decision makers and leaders. That's going to occur mainly in 2026, early 2026, when we start off our engagement plan. And then, like I said, we will implement our vision. So before the storm, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody here. We did kick off this program back in August 2024. We hired Urban Canopy Works. They wish they could have been here today to address you. They will actually be back in February in person to address you. So we got our data started. We were doing an inventory, a 15,000 tree inventory of Asheville. That's public trees only. We got that started. We got about 25% through that. We had our canopy analysis. We got about 90% done with that. And then we are also working on our invasive study, which was actually complete before the storm. And then in September 2024, of course, the storm hit and everything was kind of put on hold until we got to this point right now. So this got a little cut off. I don't know why, but anyway, focusing on that canopy study, we did finish the canopy study that was presented to us in October of this year. I'm very happy to announce that we can get rid of the old 2018 study and start focusing on the new 2022 study. Citywide, we're looking at a canopy of 56%. Now, you're going to notice that's a little different from the canopy study in 2018 when it was looked at 44%. That mainly is attributed to the resolution of the imagery, and it's also different AI and machine learning that we're able to take advantage of for this study. So there is a 12% difference in there. It can't be compared because of those requirements or those attributes. So amongst the neighborhoods, citywide, once again, 56%. Neighborhoods, 58%. That's pretty good. That's across 86 known neighborhoods that we sampled. 6 were below 30%, 30% being that minimum standard. I won't go into why that is a minimum standard, maybe at a future engagement. And then we are also working on the change in canopy study after Helene. So we did take the initiative this summer to get some leaf-on data, and we're looking for opportunities to do the assessment when we come back here soon. So this process is in 3 stages. We've been working on phase 1 and phase 2 since September. Phase 1 is mainly just administrative, putting together logistics, meeting dates, that sort of thing, building teams, looking at stakeholders, and that sort of thing. One thing to keep in mind here is the website, asheville.gov/trees. If you want to find out more about what's going on and the dates coming up and that sort of thing. Phase 2 is discovery. That's going to be the big public engagement that we have planned, starting in January and ending in March. You will all get an invite for those engagement periods. We have one coming up on February 20th and March 20th. And we will look at different things of impacts of Helene, invasives, natives, that sort of thing. That'll all be in there. Lastly, that phase 3 plan development. That's when we'll set our goals. We're going to come back to you for those, for a review of those, and then final plan release, hopefully around December of 2026. So we're about a year off from the final plan. Lastly, we're going to look at this timeline first. So December, this is where I'm giving this presentation. Once again, we hope that Urban Canopy Works can be here to do this presentation for you. In January, we have a virtual engagement during the end of January. And then February, we'll start into our stakeholder engagement periods. And those will be 60 to 80 people within a big group. Those are invite only. We'll get community leaders together to present, to talk over the plan and provide more input from there. That's February and March. April, we'll come back and we'll look at who we missed. So any kind of focus groups, we'll do one-on-one interviews, that sort of thing. And then by June, we're hoping to have you all back, or we'll come back and we'll let you review our goals, our plan goals. And then, like I said, in December, review the draft plan. The biggest things that we need from you all, as far as engagement is concerned, is getting behind the survey. We've already dropped the survey. That's already out in the public, and we've had some response back from that. So pushing that through to all your networks will be awesome. Drive community understanding of what the Urban Forest Master Plan is. A lot of people don't even understand what urban forestry is, so we're relying on you all to help us push that through. Connect with stakeholders. So as you come into those stakeholders meetings, for those of you who respond and want to come, we would love to have you. Also, times for you to engage and that sort of thing. And then to support our road shows. The road shows we kicked off in November. Those are presentations that I'm going out into the community and actually doing, letting people know what urban forestry is, what's coming up, how we want them to engage and get involved in the process. Also content, I already talked a little bit about that. That's pretty much the review that we're going to ask you to do over the next year. And then the implementation. Once we get to that point in October and November, we would like for you all to engage in that and provide that education to the folks going forward so that they know where to go and what to do. That's all I have. That's my quick 5-minute spiel. I want to open it up to questions, if anybody has any questions. Yep.
Thanks
Yep,
for
absolutely.
coming by and doing this. I've heard one other presentation that you did at my community group. I'm just wondering what you've heard from folks thus far, like what kind of questions are coming up at your public meetings, or what are folks asking you, particularly about this plan development?
So I would say probably the biggest question right now is about Helene. how much canopy we've lost since Helene, and, how are we gonna find that number coming up, and that sort of thing. We've already, like I mentioned a little bit, we've already got the imagery, so we've captured that place and time for the 2025 leaf-on imagery. We needed the leaf-on data instead of leaf-off. We have plenty of leaf-off data. It's that leaf-on so that we can get that canopy number. So that's probably the number one biggest question I've got so far.
There's no answer to it yet, is what you're saying, in terms of what was lost, or do you have a guess?
Yeah, so I mean, you can look at the imagery, post-storm, and you could see areas that were damaged by Helene. A lot of that imagery and those damaged areas were outside the city limits. Even though they were right on the border of the city of Asheville, they won't be defined in the canopy study. So, places like Webb Cove that got, absolutely devastated, those won't reflect back into our canopy study. So we're only looking at areas that were damaged within the storm. And there were, trees that came down. There wasn't a really defined area where those trees, came out. A little bit in Biltmore Park, but once again, it's a little bit in Biltmore Park that's in the city limits, and most of it's in the county. Yep.
Yeah, I was curious what the 6 neighborhoods were that were below the 30%.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't necessarily have a list of the 6 neighborhoods, but 4 of those 6 neighborhoods were actually downtown neighborhoods. And those are historically low canopy areas. So, right now I know that, our core downtown is at 14% based upon the 2022 data. It was at 9% in the 2018 data. And then there are, it also sections out north downtown as well. And then it brings out the block as a neighborhood as well. So 4 of those 6 are downtown. The other 2 neighborhoods account for about 6 acres of that total. So it's not a huge difference, because of that 30%, but that 30% being that minimum for ecological benefit.
Are those areas being prioritized for the road shows, for education? I mean, it would seem like the areas that have the lowest canopy coverage are the ones that are most vulnerable, and therefore might be most interested or should be most interested in this plan.
Sure.
Because other areas are probably in better shape. So I'm curious what the plan is to sort of address folks in those neighborhoods around the issue.
Sure. So, I mean, as far as the road shows are concerned, we're relying on folks to come to us. If you want to schedule a road show, you can just contact me, and then we'll schedule those road shows. Like I said, 4 of those 6 areas are downtown areas. So we would have to look at, downtown residents, places that we can, do the road show downtown. The other areas, like I said, only accounted for 6%. One of them was like less than an acre. So if there is somewhere that we can focus the roadshow in those areas, a community group or something like that, we certainly would be up to doing those in those neighborhoods.
Specific neighborhoods, are you gonna, is that on the website, or how does a person find that
Correct,
information?
Yeah, so you can go on asheville.nc.gov/trees, and you can click, there's another link that you have to click on there. Once you click on that link, that will actually take you to the canopy study, which will be another link, and then you're gonna scroll down and you're gonna hit another link into the chart that shows the individual neighborhoods. Yeah.
That 30% number, is that more of a best practice, or is that tied to some kind of city resolution?
So the 30% number comes from, I believe it's a best practice. It's also a program that was adopted by the United Nations Economic Council, as well as the U.S. Forest Service. It's called the 330-300 rule. And what that rule is you should be able to have 3 trees on your property or be able to see 3 trees from your property, 30% canopy coverage in your neighborhood that you live in, and then 300 meters away from a high-quality green space. So amongst, that 30%, we're just using that 30% since it's adopted worldwide as sort of a standard operating. Yep. Yeah.
Hi, Keith. Thank you so much for this. This is really important information. And I'm curious because I have started to see along, say, the Swananoa River Road on Thompson Street, there are some new plantings that say, please don't mow this, native species. I don't know if that is you all or another group in town. It doesn't have anything on the sign, but I'm curious, is that part of what you're doing, or how are you working with these other nonprofits, organizations in town that are already starting to replant?
Correct. So I don't necessarily know that for sure who that is. That's probably one of our community partners, probably Riverlink or Asheville Greenworks out doing that work. Could be Mountain True as well. So yeah, we'll be partnering with our community organizations, getting them in, getting them on board to what we're doing, keep them up to speed on that. Most of the Helene related planting is going to be handled by a different program that will be going through FEMA and that sort of thing. But we will also, it'll be factored into the master plan going forward. Obviously any place that needs trees or where we need to recanopy certain areas, we'll look at and bring to everyone's attention.
Thanks.
Yep.
Last question.
Thank you so much. I very much enjoyed the survey and encourage everyone to take it. What are you guys looking for in terms of representation? There were about just a little under 400 survey responses, and I know that's something that you're asking for the board here to do, is to amplify the survey. What's your goal around responses?
I don't want to put a number on my goal. I would love to get, probably more responses than we've ever gotten. I don't know what that is amongst city plans. I know it's probably pretty low. I would like a little bit more diversity from the responses that are coming back in. Right now we know most of the demographic is white women in their 60s. That's the biggest demographic. We need other responses. We're going to be working with Asheville Schools doing a youth program associated with this and youth engagement. So we're hoping we'll get those folks involved a little bit more so they can provide responses to the survey. It's that middle 30 to 50. That's the folks we really want to engage more with. I mean, it's fine that we have those other ones going right there, but we want to get a wide range. That way we can compare more and say that, yeah, this group wants this group wants that, and then we can break it down from there. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
I'll also note that this is one part of the reason for the invitation to have Keith here at this meeting today is we're at the very beginning of the engagement process. And so that's an important role for this project and for all of the projects that come to this board and the recovery boards, is to help shape and define what the engagement strategy looks like, and also to really tap into your networks. And so, as you think, Keith mentioned the roadshow, the survey, upcoming workshops and stakeholder focus groups, there's a role for this group and for your wider networks in most of those engagements. So I do encourage you to go to the webpage that we provided and that Keith mentioned today and kind of dig into that and be able to come back with questions and to be able to engage with that outside of this meeting to share that with your networks. So thank you for the introduction today, Keith. And we are going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is our new business. And I'm going to step over to the other microphone and get this one started. Microphone is just my size. Okay, so I'm going to get us started here. I'm going to be pretty brief with the introduction. Again, Kira Bulan. I don't have a name tag, and we're going to get to know each other well, but I'll keep telling you my name for now. I'm going to get started and be pretty brief with an introduction to this Explore Resilience Hub's organizational work plan project, and I'm also going to share the stage with Dawa Hitch, who's going to talk more specifically about one of the sub-projects included here. So these are our key takeaways. I will allow you to read these on your own, but I'll do a little bit of summarizing here. The Resilience Hub concept is not new to our community, to probably many of you who are here. There's renewed enthusiasm and focus now in the wake of Tropical Storm Helene, and that's resulting in this organizational work plan project. When we say organizational work plan project from a staff perspective, these are items that have cross-departmental touches, that have high impact, and that are really well aligned with our council priorities. So on an annual basis, we come together across departments and define what are the touch points that we have. So in this year's organizational work plan, we have an Explore Resilience Hubs organizational work plan project. There's an important role for this board that's going to help keeping this activity that we're doing within the organizational work plan and some of the sub-projects we'll touch on today, grounded in the community activity. We know that this is alive and well in our community. There is a role for the city. We're working to define that role, and we want to make sure that we're in good communication and grounded in the community-led work that's happening. So that's an opportunity and a role with this board. We want to make sure that we're consistent and considerate in what we know, that this work is grounded in our climate justice work to date, and it's grounded in best practices that we are working under in our neighborhood services and communication engagement project. So we want to make sure that we're going forward in step with community and forward with the lessons that we've heard and information that we continue to hear from our community over time. And that we're learning from our recent experiences. You know, we're not operating this in a vacuum. There's real lived experience that help inform and shape the way that we move forward in our Resilience Hub development. So here's our organizational work plan project. There's these 4 sub-projects which are named, but we understand there's so many different touch points and work that's happening across departments, from public works to our fire department, our police department, certainly in our communications and public engagement. But some of these sub-projects, and there'll be opportunities to come to this board with content around each of these. We'll model that today. So our resilient power systems, thinking about how are we working with the power systems that are in our city facilities? How do we think about our battery backup? How do we think about solar installations? What are opportunities for us to share the resources, skills, and expertise that we have with our community, and ensure that we're doing the best infrastructure development on our own city-owned facilities. Our Resilience Hub mapping project is a project that's just getting kicked off in the sustainability department, working with partners in IT and communications and public engagement to really look back and do our best to document and learn from the lived experiences, the places where people went, the places where we got resources, and what do we know about that infrastructure that is evolving and strengthening. So doing a mapping project, a participatory research project in our community in the course of this year. Our Community Engagement Academy is a project that we launched some years ago, and we're going to look back at that and refine it, make sure it's aligned with the work that we're doing as we think about resilience hubs and being grounded in our community work, and our Community Space Upfit project, which Dawa is going to talk a little bit more with you about today. As an organizational work plan project, these are we really look to define our goals on an annual basis. So while this work is we imagine that this is gonna scaffold and inform future work in future years, we also are trying to set our goals and our structure to make sure that we're doing the best work we can in FY26. The city is on a fiscal year from July 1st to June 30th. So we're really looking at clearly defining our short-term goals, being able to be responsive to what we're hearing in the process of doing this work, and using those responses to inform future work. Our goal for this year with the organizational work plan is to support the development of a policy framework for a resilience hub network in Asheville. We know that it has to do with our city facilities, our community relationships, and some of the projects and programs that we're developing. So we're looking to y'all to help us to inform that and keep it grounded in community work, with shared language and clearer definition of the city's roles in the development and maintenance of a connected and community-led resilience hub network. I'm going to really briefly talk a little bit about resilience hubs. This is a lot of words. I shall not read it to you. You have a link to this presentation that was emailed to you, but really differentiating. These are a couple working definitions. By no means is there one be-all definition that is already determined. And we're drawing from best practices. This is not the beginning of the line. We're looking regionally and nationally. we're thinking both about hubs, the sort of unicorn hub that you see on this picture here, and then also probably more realistically, what are the networks of hubs where we're getting some of those resources in multiple places across the community that's connected and well-resourced. These are a few examples. We really understand that these are not, probably all of these different features are not present in very many facilities, that we're really thinking about a network to be able to hit on where are the places where we are able to get resilient and reliable communications? Where do we go for our resilient power systems? How do we upfit and connect these resources that may be spread across the community to make sure that we're kind of moving forward in step together? And again, in collaboration with the definitions on the previous slide, how do we make this very Asheville-centric? What might work in another community that has a robust resilience hub or resilience hub network may not be relevant here. So how do we keep this grounded in what's real and what's our priorities as a community here? So just kind of setting the stage with how we're thinking and talking about this. This will come back to this board probably every meeting in some shape or form. And so kind of getting our wheels turning on resilience hubs. Here's some examples of ways that we expect this to come back. Thinking about engaging in support for each of the sub-projects. So as there's tasks, as there's projects that come within those projects or other relevant projects that are happening within the city, bringing that to you, again, asking you to flex your networks and your engagement in the community, and then recommending some key considerations that will help us to inform policy work that supports the city's role in robust community-led resilience hub framework. So kind of keeping us grounded in our role here to be able to recommend those considerations that go through our council, through our framework and up to council, that those recommendations are grounded in the experiences in the networks where you all live. Shared definition, so like I said, we flashed some quick definitions up there, not the end-all be-all, but really looking to come to some shared understanding over time internally with our colleagues across departments and also as we engage across the community. We don't need to have one bold definition, but we do want to have some shared understanding of what we're talking about when we're referencing resilience hubs and the development there. What are the opportunities to invest, either as a city, as we're thinking about investing in our city-owned facilities, and or supporting partnerships with community-owned facilities to build that strong and robust network? And then finally, what are the insights that you all can bring to support the strategic collaboration? Because we know the community-led initiatives are nimble, they're strong, and they're out the gates. So how can we be sure that we're grounding the work that we're doing at the city to be aligned with that community-led work? And I'm going to turn it over to Dawa. She's going to talk to you about the Community Space Upfit project.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Kira. Again, my name is Dawa Hitch, and I serve as the Communication and Public Engagement Director for the city. I'm really pleased to share this project with you. It's been exciting to be able to link up this work with resilience hubs and some of the community capacity building our department, Communication and Public Engagement, has been working on for years. And I don't think there's a better example than this community space upfit project that I'm going to share with you. Logan disappeared. I'm sorry. I would have been able to introduce him as the project manager for this project. And just to give you some background, it was back in 2021 that the city received some ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act, which aimed to strengthen community resilience, and that was in the wake of COVID-19. So recognizing, if you were here, well, if you were anywhere, you can probably remember back to the challenges we experienced as a community. And the idea there was, what can we do to create stronger communities so that whatever might unfold, there is some resilience built into those community-led networks that Kira was just talking about. So this project specifically really built on decades of conversations we've heard out in the community about what makes a strong neighborhood. And a big part of that was meeting people. You've probably heard this phrase, but meeting people where they are. Let's not assume we know the best place for people to gather. Let's look at where they are already gathering and see what we can do to support the work that's already taking place. So that was the foundation of this project. And again, it was aimed to enhance neighborhood and climate resilience and focus specifically on some of our more vulnerable communities. And there was a very specific focus, and that was on access to information and access to decision-making. And that decision-making being the decisions that our city council members make from the dais every other week. The goals for the project, again, were inclusive governance. So that means access to decision-making no matter where you live. Emergency response support. So this was well before the hurricane, and we saw this as an opportunity with this technology that was being introduced through the project to be able to allow for more, let's say, watch parties in neighborhoods. Not everybody can make it downtown at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday night. This example in this picture was a forum that we were holding at the Harris Cherokee Center, Asheville, and we were able to pipe in participants from the Eddington Center. So they didn't have to travel downtown, try to find parking, have to worry about childcare, all of those things. They were able to go straight to the community center and then participate in the conversation that was happening in the auditorium. So that's an important piece of this, because the idea is now, perhaps in an emergency situation with this technology there, we know the technology is there, we can perhaps share emergency information at a community level, and we saw how important that was through Helene. And then finally, the third goal was prioritizing community input. And again, that was not assuming that we know what's best for a neighborhood, but really asking people that live there, what makes the most sense to you? And here are the resources we have, so let's work collaboratively to identify what the best solution might be where you live. I'm going to go quickly through these slides. The total project budget for this component of the project was $75,000, so 3 spaces will receive up to $20,000 in hybrid technology upgrades, as well as some other supplies or resources that they identified in their application. 2 spaces were awarded up to $7,500. The neighborhoods were selected based on criteria. The criteria is laid out there. Again, you all have these slides, and that might be something that you want to consider as we move forward with defining what does a strong, resilient community resilience hub network look like in Asheville. The evaluation criteria was provided to neighborhoods in advance, and the application team was made up of a diverse group of people. You can see the departments there: our department, sustainability, human relations, anti-discrimination and compliance, as well as fire and IT services. Once the sites were selected, city staff and facility owners and managers entered into an agreement. So again, there was more conversation about what the scope of the project would look like for that particular site. Now I get to, this is what I find to be the fun part. I get to run through pretty quickly what the 5 sites were and just give you a brief overview of what they applied for and what they've been awarded. You can see in each one of these that some of the things that were already happened that make the spot well-known, impactful meeting spot are highlighted there. So for example, here at St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church, there are already ongoing programs happening there. So health screenings, workforce training, community meetings, educational workshops, those things were already happening. So the investment for this particular site was, their intention was to connect some intersectional and intergenerational community members through technology. So you might see there might be microphones, televisions, some have Wi-Fi that are being installed there, some might need tables, some might need some security measures for the technology that they have. Those are the kinds of things that the project was able to pay for. And again, it's a little bit unusual for us to be able to invest public dollars into private spaces, and that was because this money came through ARPA. So again, something else to explore as we look into what does the city's role in Resilience Hub look like in the future. We can know that that is one challenge, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. So here we are in the Emma neighborhood. This is the Petter Emma neighborhood, and this is their Economic and Cultural Center, if any of you all are aware of it. It's a great spot, very active spot. Some of the programs they're already doing include food distribution and cultural events. And then their particular investments focus on improving hybrid meeting capacity and then virtual access for isolated members. So again, if you can't make it out of your house, right, you can connect into what's happening at the community center from your home if you have a phone and can dial in that way. And again, I want to make sure everyone understands it's not just internet-based connection that can happen through the technology that we are implementing, just like this meeting. You also have the opportunity to be able to call in through phone, again, trying to eliminate as many barriers as we can to participation. Shiloh neighborhood. So here, some of the things that are already happening in this really dynamic space are youth mentorship. And then, again, there's improved virtual connectivity and access for older residents was one of their goals in the investments, as well as remote participation. So within this particular program, there's some mentoring that is baked into it to help build the connectivity skills of all residents, no matter what ages. East End Valley Street, this is at St. James, things that are already happening, closing closet, homeowner and renter assistance, and then the upgrades will be able to enable remote activities like government watch parties, like you saw in the previous example. So again, there's a lot of different things that make these sites appealing to the neighborhoods, and you can see each neighborhood has a little bit of a different taste that matches that neighborhood's needs, and that's what we want to continue to support. So this is the last one. This is in Montford. This is at the Odyssey School. Some of the things they're doing there are sustainability forums and gardening workshops. And then, again, they'll be enhancing access to participation in city meetings, as well as access in general through the technology that's being installed. So what does that mean to you all? Why am I standing here in front of you today sharing this amazing project? And that's because we've got an opportunity to have your input inform what we report out on in our final report. And why is that important? Because you heard, as Kira shared, that you all will be exploring what role will the city be playing in supporting resilience hubs in Asheville, right? A community-led network. There's lots of different players in there. So we would really love to know what you all think is most important to highlight or report back on through our closeout report. And we'll have some opportunity today for you all to discuss some things that you think would be helpful to know, right? So sitting here in this seat, what would you want to know before you could have a deep conversation about the role that the city should play in supporting resilience hubs? And here's where we'll have some inspiration. So again, this CSUP, we affectionately call it CSUP, Community Space Upfit Project, is an example of community identified space where financial and technical support from the city of Asheville was available. And again, what we're asking for today, that's my time, I'm gonna make sure I'm staying on time, that's good, right at 10 minutes. As this project concludes, again, we're gonna be looking to you for some key questions on the final report. So what I'd like to walk out of here today with is you, as a board, what are the top 3 things you think are most important for us to include in our closeout report? Again, what would you want to know before you could have a deeper conversation? I've put some example questions up here, maybe, to just kind of spark your imagination. It can certainly be criteria focused, evaluation focused. It could be like what worked well, what didn't, what were some challenges. All of those are exciting and legitimate, and we will try to answer as many of the questions that we can. We've got our own that we want to explore ourselves, but knowing from you all what the top 3 most important are will help us focus our priorities as we work on that closeout report. So we are going to be taking notes as you all have your discussion on some of the questions, and then you'll have a big old list of questions that you could then move to identify the top 3, and then that would be your vote. So any questions before I leave the podium and leave you all to your conversation?
Dow, are you asking for questions that weren't listed up there yet, or is that in the next section?
They could be these questions,
Okay.
if you like any of these, but I feel certain that you all might have others. This was
Yes.
just meant to be inspiration.
Well, I have another question that's sort of tied to those, and I'm just saying, do I ask you that now, or do I wait for the discussion?
Oh, you can try asking me now.
I can try asking you. So these are these 5 active spots that were already, so a lot of these are qualitative, which I really appreciate. And do we have utilization numbers of how many services, people, contacts were made so we know how effective these were?
Okay, so we have not finished up the project yet. We're getting the equipment into the hands, but this perfect segue for me to leave you all to the conversation. Those are the kinds of questions
Okay.
that we're looking for, right? So sitting in your seat, I would want to know, well, how many people are being served? How are the sites tracking how they're being served? And then that might lead to the conversation down the road when we're talking about what does the city's involvement in resilience hubs look like. We might want to say, for example, that if there's going to be a city investment, we think that it's very important for there to be a strong tracking mechanism in place so that we can see how many people were served, or some other criteria that you all think is important. Does that help?
Yes,
Great.
thanks.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm
Dawa?
gonna,
Dawa, I do have one question.
yes,
So you had mentioned earlier that there were potentially some challenges with getting resources out to these private properties. Is that something that we anticipate being a challenge in this next phase of it, or should we assume that what happened here could happen in the future as we think about these questions?
sure. So maybe one point of clarity, just in general, it can be challenging for taxpayer dollars, public money to be invested in public spaces, just as a baseline challenge in working in local government. This was a unique experience that we were able to take advantage of. And we are still right now, as we are getting this equipment into the hands of the communities, finding out what was challenging ourselves. So we will be covering that. If you just want to give that one a pass, if you've got another top 3, I can promise you that we're going to be sharing what was challenging and what opportunities did we see. But that would be a baseline challenge with public funds. And then for you all, when we're thinking right about the network, it's a little bit easier if other agencies are supporting funding for spaces. And so that might be a consideration as we're thinking about what does the city's role look like in resilience hubs, right? We want to have an understanding that there are some limitations from the city government side. And then if we know that, we might be able to identify opportunities from the public or nonprofit sector so that we're not inhibited by the barriers that we have in local government. So it's a big conversation. And then those pieces of it, right? We've got private, we've got nonprofit, we've got government. They each have opportunities and challenges, and getting to know those, I imagine, is going to be important as we really hone in on what the city's role can be. So we're really maximizing, right? We're taking advantage of the synergy between the things. Does that help?
It does, yeah.
All right, anybody else? And then, am I typing up here? Okay.
Don't be too bothered by the board. At some point in the next 15 minutes or so, we do want to move to an actual vote where we're practicing our skills, and the vote is, what are your priorities? So this is non-binding. These are not the only things, as Sal mentioned multiple times. Just to reiterate, the report will be robust, and we have our own needs as the staff who are implementing this program and things that we want to evaluate. And we recognize there may be blind spots. And so that's the question to you all, is as we think about doing this work that started before this board structure and before Helene, and bringing it to a closeout in the context that we currently live in, what are considerations that are important to you from the perspectives that you bring to this conversation that we might learn from this project? Yeah.
Thank you for all that info. As I was listening to a lot of the descriptions and kind of ideas of how this all would work, one piece that I didn't really hear a lot about in there that I would be really interested in knowing more in are, I kind of see it in like two different functions. One being like everyday life for these kind of resource centers, and another being more emergency mode. And as we're talking about being able to connect via internet or phone, I would love to hear more information about what measures would be in place during an emergency when we don't have phone and internet, like what kind of low-tech radio skills, mobility. You know, it would be great to know where the different resource hubs are, but what if an emergency happens over here? Like what info, how can we make it mobile, and how can we make it adaptable for when things are not functioning like they normally do in an emergency?
So if we were to bring that into this project for the closeout report, would the question look something like, what opportunities for mobility were discovered through the project?
I guess my question is, what measures are in place for adaptability in emergency with lower tech
Okay,
and mobility?
okay. All right, and I just want to bring this back. So these questions will be, we're going to have to find a way to bring it back to this specific project.
Okay.
And we can do that with your question, but I'll keep repeating back, trying to frame it through, you know, how can we bring what we've learned in this project to answer this larger question that might be on the floor. So we can keep running through those. What considerations or what limitations around mobility were discovered through this project?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, Michelle, and you can like, let me know if we need to be clearer for you as you're capturing these questions.
What opportunities are there, mobility considerations and resources?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And low tech was in there as well.
Yeah, and I guess this is also for the like hub mapping more so than this specific project, is just making sure that we're building resources that will work when we don't have cell service and power and internet.
Perfect. So again, for this specific question that we're working on, it could be what low-tech options were employed by the sites?
So I have a question that relates to kind of a number 4, which is around the accountability issue. So I imagine that there's statutory accountability, and that's where Mr. Branham can obviously advise, like what is legally required for a government to invest in a private property or a nonprofit property. I think that beyond that, to me, that like flexibility is really at a premium when it comes to resilience to me, because to some extent it's very hard. I mean, there are certain things we can anticipate. Be better to have greater connectivity. But obviously, there's lots of contingencies that are hard to plan for, and it seems like to look at how do we balance the need for accountability because it's public dollars, with the need for these communities to be as flexible as possible in how they address their community's needs, so that there's not like a lot of like rigidity that they have to do exactly this or that when the needs may evolve over time. So how do we balance that consideration of accountability versus wanting to give these communities the kind of flexibility that will actually make them maximally resilient?
Yeah.
Does that?
So how did we balance accountability and flexibility?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
With the underscore of you have to, there's a certain amount of accountability that's mandated, that you obviously have to be accountable to a certain degree so as to stay within the law. But beyond that, can we be as flexible as possible in supporting these communities in themselves being adaptive?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and helps us with that question, right? Because we can lead with like, here are the statutory things that we must take into consideration. And through this project, we were able to do X, Y, and Z to be as flexible as we could while also being accountable. Got it.
Thank you for this. It's so interesting to me that it kind of got teed up before Helene happened, and we obviously learned a lot through Helene. But one thing I'd be interested in is what projects didn't get funded that asked for funding? Like, what's the need going forward? And then are there any geographic areas that need to be filled?
Gotcha. So what, can you say that, Anna? Can you say that one more time?
Which projects didn't get funded through this, what did we call it, CSUP?
Oh, nice, good job. Yes.
CSUP project, and then if there are any geographical areas that didn't get, that weren't a part of this funding.
Gotcha. Yes, and so in our report out, perhaps something we want to consider is also how we're more on the selection process, because we did use our climate justice map as one of the criteria to make sure that the sites were spread out as much as they could be with the applicants across the city. So we can highlight that in the report out.
Great, thanks.
I feel like that leads into the question that's been on my mind, which is how is equity being measured and managed with the flow of resources to the different hubs?
All right, yeah. Perfect. So how is equity managed in the distribution of the, how is equity addressed or managed in the selection process, maybe?
Yeah, I guess how is it initially measured before the resources are even distributed, and then how is it managed after that?
Okay, so equity in the distribution of the funding, and then in the project management of it moving forward. Alma?
I don't know if my question is almost like hers, but I'm asking, who will be responsible for shoring up the resources services in the community as the 5 communities that you have already working with? Is there a specific person that you contact or you connect with to make sure that the guidelines and what you felt like the money should be used on is being used specifically for those reasons?
Okay, so yes, how is the investment being managed after installation?
Amen. Thank you.
And so, since these projects have such an opportunity to increase engagement, and obviously that's the function of them, are they going to be up and running so that we could be utilizing these places to increase engagement and some of the things that we're trying to increase engagement around?
So we are hoping that all of the equipment should be installed by the end of January is what our hope is. So yes, certainly here in the near future, and then we could absolutely, as part of our engagement planning, include those sites as places for people to either participate remotely or, as we just heard with the Urban Forest Master Plan, there may be a road show and they could be a stop along the way.
So we could almost use sort of like a re-aim framework to measure from baseline in terms of evaluation and see whether or not we actually see the kind of increased engagement from particular populations that we're intending to more deeply engage.
So maybe a question there is how might we measure increases in service or engagement after the sites are online? How to measure, impact to engagement.
Reach,
Yep,
the things that we've talked about.
yep, demographics, who are we reaching, that type of thing.
This is less of a question for afterwards and more just to clarify. Is that $70,000 the budget? And is there a plan and request for future funding to do similar projects in other areas?
So not yet. There's nothing in a budget that's set aside for something like this right now. That's not to say that it can't be, but it was. They were one-time funds, and that was a very important part of the conversation with the sites, and then the maintenance plan for that, the accountability. How long do we go? Make sure that everything's accessible to the people. All of those are part of the report out.
Okay. So we're talking about a total of $70,000?
75.
75, okay.
Yep. Jack, did you?
Yeah, I was going to say, I just love this whole project. And something that I didn't know, I've only come across recently, is Western North Carolina and Asheville being part of that, has like a really long legacy of community clubs and community centers going back to the 50s. There was a very intentional investment and focus in developing communities. Like Shiloh has one of these, and Mills River, and I just love the idea that we're bringing those back. And something that I learned is after COVID, those community clubs and community centers have been aging out and losing influence. But in COVID, they really found their groove again, and what they, their purpose of bringing together people in crisis. And I love the idea that we're also creating these things with the intention of, not just in crisis, but in, everyday things, getting engagement in city stuff. So that's kind of my comment. But I also thought one thing that would be interesting to look at is these projects and access to them, by bus, by foot, and, with the transit analysis that's going on right now, it's been really interesting to see some of the data that's come out of that, where people live in proximity to jobs. And so I'm thinking out loud, but it'd be cool to see, like, this project in the Burton Street community, like, how many people does it serve, in that community? Like, what is its footprint? And I don't know how to do that, but obviously there are transportation barriers, and kind of defining, like, this project is, Emma is maybe slightly, Emma, is a really dangerous community to move around in, other than in a car and some of the bus service. But while we're rethinking our transit service right now, it'd be cool to figure out how to align that and overlay our transportation system, our bike network, our pedestrian network. And that's not really a good question at all, but I'd be interested in, like, not the geographical piece, but who has physical access to these community centers. And I'd love that there's also this digital element to it as well, because that helps provide access.
Right. So I'm wondering if maybe the question might look like, what opportunities or challenges were discovered with respect to transportation?
Yeah, I'd love
And
that.
I think that would
Yeah.
be big enough that we could say
Yeah,
people can walk to it, or, this one is available by bus, or, okay.
I was going to say, I had a similar thought around some of the existing things. When you said upfit, one of my initial questions when you started describing this was, are we looking to identify, you had a fancy picture of the hub of a nice new facility, but using existing community centers, existing facilities to upgrade, upfit, like you said, repurpose and re-engage, because they already are centered in areas where people can typically get to and know of. Is that something that is a direct tie, first of all, intentional in what you did this time? Was that part of the criteria? And that's something we can discuss going forward in planning these resilience hubs. Are there specific community centers, and some are connected to libraries, right, that we want to keep and want to repurpose in that way? So.
I think how we might incorporate that one into this particular project, because they were all very intentionally not city-owned spaces.
Okay.
I wonder if it's something like proximity to city-owned spaces. Would that be something that you all would be interested in knowing, what the proximity of these four sites are to city-owned spaces? And then and I pause because that gets into the whole thing of, there are a lot of challenges with city-owned spaces. How accessible can they be? Can they be ready, up and going 72 hours after an event? Those are things that we took into consideration with a not city-owned site, right? Because people can get to the church. They got the key to the church. They can get to the church the day after. If there's trees down, whatever it might be more difficult for city staff, perhaps.
I think that's part of my question too, is we're balancing what that looks like going forward and what these questions are that can inform that process. Is it a specific move away from city-owned, or is it community partnerships, or are there a few case by case that can be, this one we want to kind of keep and build on versus this one? And I don't know, for clarification, are all those community centers owned by the city? Is that
The ones that we showed here today?
just all the community centers?
Oh,
like
not
they're-
all community centers, no.
Okay,
There's
so
the
that might be
recreation
important
centers. And then
to know the
Kira's got an
difference.
amazing project coming down the line where we're mapping out what some of those
Okay.
areas are. So that'll
Okay.
be another data point for this further conversation. All right, we're ready to go? Yeah.
I have another question, and it may kind of tie into what was said here. How do the community hubs include the resilience information with other organizations in those communities who are doing some of the same outreach and work? Are there collaborations? Are
Okay.
we requiring collaboration with other entities within communities that are doing some of this resilience work already?
Excellent. So another question is, what other organizations are these sites collaborating with? And we can, yeah. All right, so I think that's all the time we have for questions so that we can get to public input. But that, do you have one?
Just one right quick. I was just thinking, speaking of community centers and the city centers, how do you evaluate the criteria for these programs to go in the community centers compared to the city?
Okay.
Are they different?
Gotcha. It's a great question. How do the performance criteria for the community centers relate to performance criteria for city-owned sites?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So now I know it's time for your vote, and we've got to have time for public comment.
Yes.
Kira's giving
I'm
you-
about to put these on the screen because Michelle's furiously typing the last ones. She's doing an amazing job, and I'm moving them over.
Yeah, how do the performance criteria for the CSUP sites relate to performance criteria for city-owned recreation centers? Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to put this up there, and
All
you
right.
can determine if. Technical difficulties here, you guys, but we're working it out. Give it a shot here. I got it. I just flipped it over.
All right, so there are some questions, and our hope here is that we can get to what agreement?
Do we number those maybe?
All right, so maybe the,
Can I ask, say about number 9, where it says what other sites are in collaboration with these sites? Wouldn't it be best to kind of name community center instead of saying these sites? Because, that's kind of nebulous.
yeah, we can get that updated.
Okay.
We'll get that updated.
I also think amending the, how might we measure impact of engagement? We heard a lot about number of people served. Like, could we add some metrics that we would like to see? So I heard number of people served, maybe like hours open, capacity to expand, like evaluation from the users of the site. And it could almost add number 7 in there. You could have 7 as a sub-bullet or another measure of that engagement.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Number 10, the way I was hearing that discussed, I'm not sure I understand performance criteria, your term, and then performance criteria of city-owned rec centers. Is that the same as the community centers we're talking about, or other we're talking about, I was hearing it in terms of, and maybe I was the only one, future planning for resilience hubs and how that is connected to existing centers. That one, the way it's up there, I wasn't sure I understood how that was interpreted.
So for this report, remember, this is a report about a city project, so we want to bring to light what's important to you all, so that what we would be able to report on is CSUP versus the city-owned sites. For this report, we would not be able to reach out to all of the different community centers across the city and find out how they track performance, but that could be something that you all discuss down the road. So this is very narrow, just how can we give you guys good information to inform your big conversation down the road? And then I did, Christy, I heard some, did we capture those, some different performance metrics, number of people served?
Number of people served, demographics, hours of availability to the public, capacity to expand. I would add number 7 into number 6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those two.
For 6, I was also hoping specifically, and does it actually increase engagement in decision-making or in some of the kinds of processes that you used as examples? You know, so are folks showing up for those like hybrid meetings where they're able to engage in meaningful discussions about decision-making, specifically around some of the recovery board activities?
Yeah, Leah, I liked what you said earlier of baseline, like of all these impact measures, take a baseline prior to all the upgrades being made for each of the metrics, and then measure, 6 months, a year, whatever that time frame is. So, but I love that baseline.
Okay, perfect. So I guess if you guys want to take your vote, somebody would, go ahead.
I mean, I think if everyone just writes down their 3 picks, and then we just go through them 1 through 9, and people raise their hands, we'll get a tally of what the 3 most
So you
are.
might move that we
I move.
vote for 1 through 9 as individuals and take the top 3 as the ones that we'll do. a
Right, so
deep
everyone
dive.
privately write down your top 3, and, yeah.
Yep, and then we'll just vote on each one, yeah? Got it. All right, are we ready to start? You think we're ready to start moving?
So we can only vote on 3.
Vote on 3, yep. This isn't the last. This is just a priority. Honestly, you all, this is just a priority. We'll be talking about this for the next couple years, all of this. All right, so just to be respectful of time, since we're not moving into our board chair yet, I don't mind doing this. So, so let's start with number 1. How many people would like to vote on that as their top priority? Got 4. You got it? All right, moving into number 2. Let's see, 2. Number 3. 1, 2, 3. Number 4, maybe I should read these for our folks on, I don't think we have anyone on the phone, but 4, how is equity being managed in distribution of the funding and this distribution? So that would be number 4. 1, 2. Whoop. All right, and then number 5 is how is this investment being managed? 1, 2, 3. How might we measure impact of engagement? We've got a number of examples. 9. Proximity of city-owned spaces. What other sites are in collaboration? 1, 2, 3. And then number 9, how do the performance criteria relate to performance for other rec centers? 1. All right, so Kira, our top 3 priorities for answering in this report are?
Looks like number 6, how would we measure impact of engagement with some examples, has 9. Number 4, How is equity being managed in distribution of funding in this distribution is 6. And then the third one is number 1. What low-tech options were and are available at the sites with 4. And we've captured the rest of the votes. So understand that we'll take this into consideration as we prioritize and put the report together. In the interest of time, I'm going to move us along. I know that we have one public comment in the room. Dan, is there anyone online? Thank you for that discussion. This was a work in progress, and I appreciate the way that you all brought that discussion to the table. 0 online. Thank you. Okay, we're going to open public comment here in the room. We have 3 minutes. I think you're signed up for public comment. Sharon, thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Summerall. I am a member of Coalition Asheville Neighborhoods. I'm a former member of UFC, where I reviewed plans for 6 years with the city of Asheville, and a former NAC board member. And I'm nervous, so sorry about the voice thing. So I've been following the urban forestry master plan since it became before us on the board at UFC. And one of my worries has always been that this was going to be like the comp plan, a feel-good ideal and not have any teeth to it. So we've got 3 phases, and the last phase 2 is review of Asheville policies and codes. So what's going on is we have heat island effect in downtown that David mentioned, and the reason we have that is due to codes, the UDO. It's a density issue. We've got public trees, which is chapter 20 that's being regulated, which are street trees and trees in our parks. And then we've got private trees, which is 711.3 and 719 of the UDO, which regulates all our trees and how they're planted in development. And then we got trees on private property, which are regulated by Raleigh, and that's a whole nother thing. So I'm going to be following you all around because I live in the weeds. So you know that you just can't go and say, I'd like to put trees downtown and make downtown less urban heat. You can't do that. We've got rules and regulations for everything we do. So what we need to do is we need to re-engage the Urban Forestry Commission, because we've got some brilliant people on there that have been working really hard and know all these nuances of what's going on. They rewrote chapter 20 and worked really hard, and it's sitting in Public Works for a number of reasons. I could go into all the politics because I've been doing this a long time, and I can go into how Helene affected this as well, and how the city, in my opinion, is having a hard time with the transparency issues of why we don't have the Urban Forestry Commission in session so that we can tell you that we've got over, I think it's $500,000 sitting in fee and lieu. And they disbanded that committee, which was part of the UFC. We have a real reason why we did that. I was part of that development and I could go on and I will go on, but y'all don't want to get into the weeds in this urban forest master plan. We need to take it to the public, but the public doesn't know what I know. And I follow everybody around and I tell them, you can't do this because we've got regulations and rules. How do we tie in the rules and the regulations into the urban forest master plan and give us what we want as a city, as opposed to the comp plan? When I've gone before city council and argued a development on the comp plan because of the green infrastructure that we all want, to the developer that says that we all need housing. So we're crammed into a problematic problem with the Urban Forestry Master Plan if we don't have the smart people in the Urban Forestry Commission telling all y'all what it is we really want to know, because it's all in the weeds. Unless you live like I do, you can't, as listening to, if I could be Dawa, I would follow her around because she can disseminate information for everybody to get it in a readily available manner. But when you're working in the UDO, that is deep.
Thank you,
right? And
Sharon.
you're
That's
working
3
in chapter
minutes.
20. So I think my 3 minutes are up. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. And as we emailed this morning, there were no emailed comments or voicemail comments the night before. So that closes our public comment, and that concludes our meeting with a motion to adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Calls to action.
Yes, there are calls to action that are written. Thank you for reminding me of that, David. Yes, the calls to action are those that we have already mentioned today and those that we have emailed to you, but I do want to reiterate them out loud so that we're all aware of the opportunities. The Urban Forest Master Plan engagement, going to ashevillec.gov/trees, take the survey, request a roadshow, tell your friends and neighbors that they too can request a roadshow, attending the January and February and March meetings as they come up. You'll get announcements about that from us. The French Broad and Azalea Parks open house and focus groups. I also sent an email about this out to this group. The People and Environment Recovery Board has 2 reserved seats in each of the focus groups that are happening on December 12th. And I have a sign up. So far, we have 1 person signed up for one of those boards, so one of those meetings. If you would like to attend one of those meetings, see me after the meeting today. You can sign up in real life. The information on the French Broad and Azalea Parks open house and focus groups is also on the website, so directing the public and you all to visit the website there. Take and share the online survey, which is also available for the French Broad and Azalea Parks. Attend and share the open house on Wednesday, December 10th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Asheville Middle School cafeteria. That's an open house, general introductory information about both projects. Come learn about that and then see what the additional engagement opportunities are. For this recovery board, for those reserved seats, if you'd like to attend, please see me after the meeting. Thank you for that reminder, David. Now, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.